name is Katie Finlane, and I am here representing the Start Out community for the Access to Capital Board. We are so grateful to have you guys on with us today. I'm excited for the panelists. I'm excited for the conversations that are going to take place because honestly, it is a great panelist group. Just a little intro on what Start Out is, who we are, what we're doing in our communities. Start Out is a US-based nonprofit organization founded in 2009 that focuses on supporting LGBTQ entrepreneurs and startup founders. Our mission is to increase the number of diversity and impact of the LGBTQ entrepreneurs and also amplify their stories, hence the topic tonight. Really fast, a quick thanks to our sponsors of Start Out. We have many. So with that said, really quick with Zoom logistics, we do want and encourage questions and answers. So please use that function, the Q&A function, to submit questions. We will be managing the chat today, so please feel free to introduce yourselves and chat with your fellow attendees. All panelists specific questions should be submitted in the Q&A, and we will answer those at the end of this event. And with all of that said, I would love to introduce you to Mike, who is going to be the moderator for tonight's event. Mike, turning it over to you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Katie. I'm wondering if, and thank you to Matt Cisco, who's helping us to run the webinar with the material. Matt, do we have the bios of all our amazing Start Out panelists here queued up? Oh, we have a little bit of a mission slide. I might turn that back over to, there we go. Thank you, perfect. So I'm actually going to empower our panelists to tell their story by giving them about 30 seconds on stage just to tell us a little bit about who they are, what they do, and why they love Start Out. So let's just start with James, because you're on the left there.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Michael. Hi, everyone. I'm really excited to be here today. And I am a marketing executive. I work at HBO Max. And I also previously worked in more of the startup sector. So I was at an on-demand mobile beauty app called Be Glammed, which was acquired by Priv. So we were essentially the Uber for the beauty industry. And I was very much involved from day one in building the company up and securing funding. So happy to talk about that today. And recently, as of this past weekend, just graduated from business school. So super excited to be here. And I guess I'll pass it over to Julie.
Hey everybody, I'm Julie Kaczynski, very difficult name, so I go by Julie K. I've got two roles. One, I am a co-founder and CMO of a new midlife beauty wellness company called Weil that is all about midlife women. We just raised $1 million from Serena Williams, Serena Ventures, and another $1 million from Springdale Ventures. And we have just rolled out in Whole Foods. So I have just very recently had to tell my story. And I also have a consultancy called Pitchwell, where I've helped companies of all sizes both get their pitches ready to fund and get strategics or win competitions, as well as setting up their story and brand and marketing structure for companies, again, of all sizes. Good to be here. And Nikki.
Hi, I can't see myself, but can you all see me?
You look great, Nikki.
I look great? Oh, good. I did not shower for this, but I ran a brush through my hair. I'm Nikki Levy. I'm really happy to be here. I wear many hats, but one hat is a Netflix shoot that I'm literally on from LA, and I'm going to turn this off. Okay. My background, currently I'm the chief content officer at a company called Standard. We are up about 160 like education-ish YouTubers. Like if you're part of nerd culture and NerdTube, you probably know the people we rep. But the other part of my life is that I'm a creator also at Standard, because for the last decade, I've done a live event and a podcast called Don't Tell My Mother, where celebrities like Tracy Ellis Ross, Kate McKinnon, Ali Wong, Tan France, Fortune Feimster, Angelica Ross, Shangela tell a true story they wouldn't want their moms to know. And then on the podcast, they tell their mothers, which is like a wonderful thing about the pandemic. Like you get to do things that you wouldn't have been able to do in a live event. Oh, hey, Eric. So that's me. So I wear the executive hat on one side, and I wear the writer performer hat on the other, which I have to tell you, I love it that way. I think doing either one of them separately would not scratch an itch that I have. But my background basically is that I've been in LA 20 years, and I come from developing movies and television. So I was the director of development at Imagine. I was one of the people who made Frost Nixon. I ran a company at Fox. And for about 5 or 6 years, I was the head of scripted content at DreamWorks TV, where I did a lot of YouTube content, and I made 48 episodes of a sketch show for Verizon Go 90 RIP. So I also coach a lot of celebrities and actors and performers on their log line. So helping them essentially tell the story of their life in an elevator pitch, so they get out what they need to know, not just about a project, but about who they are. And I'm glad we're talking about storytelling, because I can talk about storytelling like all day. So thanks for having me, and I'm really excited to be here. And I will pass it to my very dear friend, Se-Young Cho.
Hello, everyone. Excited to be here. So many congratulations. James, congratulations on your graduation. Julie, congratulations on your fundraising. So as I said, my name is Se-Young. I'm a digital storyteller and a content marketer. I currently work as head of strategy and strategic partnerships at Captivate, which is a influencer marketing technology startup. I don't know if it still qualifies as a startup. It's been around for about 7 years. And previous to that, my first job actually right out of school was a marketing startup, and I got hooked from day one, and I've tried on a lot of different hats, going brand side, agency side, but at any place that I've gone to, there's something that I've been bringing to every single place is building and growing something new and different. Previously, I was at Horizon Media, the world's largest independent media agency, where I built their in-house influencer marketing department and just got hooked on working with creators, and now get to work for the technology that enables creators to tell their stories, many of whom are entrepreneurs. And I'm excited to talk to you guys today.
Fantastic. Well, let's get started. We got an amazing team here. So for those in the audience, you may be fundraising, you may be just getting started and building a team, a whole variety of different use cases for what it is that the story that you're trying to tell. And I'd like to just prompt the group here to ask this question, which is, how do you develop your story? Where and how do you even begin? And one other prompt that I'll sort of put out there is that there is an intersection with your business story and your personal story. And oftentimes that is the most challenging aspect of it, because we're self-conscious and we may not want to try to intersect or overlap our personal stories with our professional stories. So when you're coming up with your story for your business, how do you get started? And I'll just leave that open for a forum for a few minutes, and then we'll go from there.
I'm happy to jump in here, and I'll be the brave soldier who goes out first. But, I do think the personal story is so pivotal to that pitch, and it comes through in that origin story. How did you come up with your idea? But I actually like to take a different approach, which is actually thinking about who I'm speaking to. What is the need that we're trying to solve for? What's going on in their minds? What is the problem that's keeping them up at night? And from that place, trying to think about, and what's the solution that you are bringing to that audience? Sometimes I think rooting it in who you're speaking to, or who you're trying to help or work with or communicate or support, is actually a really empathic way to think about your business story. So that would be one suggestion I have.
Completely agree. And I'm just going to build on that and be a little tactical on what you had to say there. So because of that, your story is actually a few different stories, right? Depending on your audience. So to me, a really strong story is having a few key points that you do not vary from. They are absolutely foundational to who you are, and you keep coming back to them like a mothership. And then you have those other entree points that you are able to kind of feel the room out for in advance. And how you find those, to me, tactically is, I'm getting really in the weeds, start with a pack of Post-its. Please write it down on paper, because it's small and it's little, and you write one idea per Post-it, and you write everything you can think of, and you start peeling, and taking away, because the key part of a story is saying a lot less and not more. And I will leave some space for someone else to go from there.
I will jump in. It's funny because I guess I'm just very touchy-feely sometimes, but I come at this from like very much a heart space. And like it's interesting because I feel like when I'll speak from my own experience, right? So for, oh my God, I mean, literally 10 years I was an executive and I was miserable. I mean, I will just be super honest. I was miserable. I was making good money. I had a really fancy email address and title, and it didn't do anything for me except, you know, pay my bills, which I was super grateful for. But there was something for me that was missing. And it was like, I had been trained to write and perform. And here I am on the other side of the desk working with writers. And it's like, yeah, I know what to tell you, but I feel like I should be on the other side of this table. And when I honestly just got this fluke of an idea driving down Fairfax, and I saw this little theater that doesn't exist anymore, and the Cheap Trick song, "Mommy's all right, Daddy's all right, they just seem a little," everybody can join in. Anybody who's my age. And I got this idea to do an event, something Don't Tell My Mother, because growing up, I grew up with a very overbearing, oversharing, dysfunctional Jewish mother in Queens. I mean, that is my story. It was really hellish growing up. But like through a lot of therapy, I started to realize, oh my God, maybe all this shit that I've kept in could actually be of service to other people. So for me, I was like, you know, can I give myself the opportunity to write and perform while also using all of my connections from years of working in the studio and network system to find fabulous talent that's famous and then not famous yet and help them tell their stories. So for me, part of founding, I guess, my business for the last decade has been, what do I have to give to the world that nobody else could give in this way? And I'll be honest, like if I did not come from like a house that was like a hoarder, truly, and it's not like a joke, this is like Hoarder before Hoarder was a show, like a hoarder situation and crazy divorced family, and have things that I was embarrassed about, but now I actually want to bring from the darkness into the light. If I didn't have that, I wouldn't be the right person to shepherd anybody else through it. So something I really like to think about is what are and I tell all my clients this, but I really like it. Like, what are the things that you're embarrassed about? What are the things that make you unique that maybe you hated? Maybe you thought they were just an absolute defect. And that now in 22, when we're all talking about honesty and actually showing who we really are and not a stupid Instagram picture that's photoshopped and looks perfect when your life is falling apart, what are those things? Because I would imagine in a very honest and truthful way that if you're starting your own business, it's not just about money. I'm imagining there's something in this business that is important to you and that is so uniquely yours that you are the right person to do it. And how does that really connect to your life and who you are?
Nikki, I love that. And it reminds me of a phrase that I will never forget because it's very memorable. Make your mess your message. And that is a Robin Roberts quote from her masterclass, which I highly recommend going and watching. It's incredible. James, what do you have to add to starting your story?
Absolutely. Well, I'm definitely going to have to sign up for Robin Roberts's masterclass. And Nikki, just to piggyback off of what you just mentioned, this is actually something we learned a lot about in business school, just because that's, a topic that is definitely topical because I, just graduated, but we talked a lot about finding your purpose. So like understanding, asking yourself, like, what is my purpose in life? What is the purpose of my company? And trying to draw a correlation there. I think that even investors, a lot of times they look for founders and executives at, companies that are trying to raise money that really have that like authentic connection with their company and with their company's purpose. And oftentimes, if you have that marriage, if you have that purpose for the value proposition of the company, whatever that might be, and it correlates with like your purpose in life, like that's kind of what's going to keep the engine going. Like when times get tough, when things are hard, And outside of just kind of the functional value that your company might deliver, and the forecast and like all those unit economics that people look at, like these investors, I feel like it really does have to also, like, companies have to have that purpose and that value add for clients. So I think just finding your purpose, figuring out how that aligns with your company's purpose, and then really kind of nurturing that as part of your brand storytelling.
I think that's so true with regards to your customer, to your investors. With your investors, they're looking at obviously your idea, the market opportunity, and they look at your story to try to understand how much effort will this person put in when the times get tough, and grit and persistence is the number one determinant of success when it comes to founders. I would love to understand, and first quick, I forgot to introduce my story. So I'm a filmmaker. My name is Mike Tringe. I'm the CEO of Creator Up. And my story is that I went to USC Film School. It was very expensive, $250,000, 4 years of learning, and you get out and don't know if you got a job. And I wanted to create a learning solution for creative professionals who could easily get access to media skills training and work. And that's what we do at Creator Up. So in my case, I had to speak to someone else to try to understand what my story was, because I didn't think my story was all that interesting. And then somebody said, wait a minute, what your story is why you started your business. And I had a light bulb moment. So I would love to hear from the group here, what was your light bulb moment? And Nikki, I think you shared it a little bit, but what was your light bulb moment with your story or your business that you took on the road?
I'll just add one thing to what you said, Mike, which is that, like, we are the worst judges of our own experience. We're the worst judges of our ideas. We're the worst judges of our own stories. Like it's like just crazy successful people pitch ideas to me, and it's like, yeah, but that's not, oh, that's not interesting. It's like, no, it's not interesting to you because you've lived it for 40 years, but it's interesting to other people because once you share it, all of a sudden you share your details. Nobody will have the same experience as you, but they'll have some experience to put over it. So don't, like your head is a dark room where negatives are developed. My head is a dark room where negatives are developed. So like Mike said, like, please, like, don't kill your own ideas or kill your own pitch because you don't think it's good. Run it by people you trust, which is, by the way, not like your partner or your mom. Like, it's good to run it by people who, aren't afraid for your success.
Something that I was going to add on to that is actually, I think sometimes this idea of a light bulb moment, it can sort of haunt us, right? It's like, I don't know, have I had my light bulb moment? And it's sometimes, for some people, it is. The light is on and it, and that's my purpose, and it connects to my business and it's perfect. Sometimes for some of us, it's not. It's trial and error. It's trying on different shit, spaghetti at the wall. That wasn't it. So I think part of being an entrepreneur, obviously, is also not being afraid to fail fast, to realize even if it isn't an aha moment, there's still something to learn and to take from every single experience. So part of my responsibility at Captivate is thinking about the brand positioning and the company strategy, and how do we translate that message for investors, which is one story, as Julie said, and to customers, and to different types of customers, which are very, very different. And I have a very cluttered space. There's a ton of different technology platforms that are doing what we do. So it has been more of a spaghetti at the wall experience where you just test and learn. Did that message stick? Ask for a lot of feedback, like Nikki said, and be not afraid to change it up, scrap it, reiterate, evolve, so over and over and over again.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I'm going to jump on that too. And I think it's really about seeing the light bulb shine in the person you're speaking to, right? Even if it's on Zoom, because so often we're so interested in our story, what we want to talk about, our thing, that we are not tuned into the energy of the audience, right? And if I think about, like, my pitch is not for me to tell me about you, but for us to connect and for me to, like, see that light pop on you. And the more you test those stories with the guy that works the barista and someone who knows nothing about your category, and someone who knows too much about your category. And you start to see, where does the light shift? Where does the head nod? Where? You look and feel those energetic moments. And the more you test them across people who know absolutely nothing and too much, and use those as your two ends, when you find those light bulb pops in them, you're hitting it. And then get out of the way. Get out of the way with less detail and less to mention.
That's great. James, go ahead.
Yeah. Well, so the company I joined, it was called Be Glammed at the time before it was acquired. And I remember I was not the founder. It was founded by someone named Miley Pacheco. She was a professional makeup artist. And she had started the company because she really wanted to make sure that people felt empowered to access beauty experiences in the comfort of their own home and on their own terms. And I loved that concept. And I was actually born with vitiligo. So I've always had kind of skin, insecurities around like right here, I have a big kind of albino spot almost. And so I felt the connection to her and the connection to my own personal experience, having insecurities around my skin, and realized like, oh, you can, like, this business concept like relates to me. Like I could be a user for a special occasion or an experience. And I'm also interested in technology, and I use Uber. So, the concept of like the Uber for beauty just really stuck with me. And so I think that kind of having, and this maybe goes back to like even, what Nikki shared earlier as well, around like being raw, being honest, like finding out kind of the truth behind, the pitch. And I think that really at least stuck for me when I was pitched initially. And that allowed me, as the head of marketing for the company over the course of 4 years, to position the company for success and to position the company for a successful acquisition, because I truly believed in the value proposition. So I think really tuning into yourself and like what's drawing you to your vision, what's drawing you to your new ideas. And then I think Se-Young has said so well, like continue to test and ideate and being open to failure.
Something that I think is really cool that both James and Julie are hitting on that I loved is saying Uber for beauty, that kind of level of comparison when you can take your idea. If you want to explain it to somebody who doesn't know your industry, what you do, try it on kid, grandma, whatever, that's actually a really great way to make it really relatable. At Captivate, we like to say if Salesforce is the system of record for customer data, Captivate is the system of record for creator data. Contextualizing with something that is well known is a super helpful trick for a very fast pitch.
I love that. Like in movies and TV, it's literally a log line, and part of the first part of most log lines is it's parenthood meets tax. I don't know. But like, you get it, right? Like, oh, okay, it's family, but it's comedy, but there's emotion, but there's, like you kind of get that. I love that. And like something else that I really like what you all said, which is like, for me, sometimes I get nervous and I get anxious when I'm pitching. I have to pitch talent all the time, and I get nervous. Sometimes I don't get nervous. Sometimes I get nervous. And it's like, sometimes I want to say the thing. And so I have my thing that I say, and then kind of like what you all said, like, zip it, right? Like, listen, because most people just want to hear themselves talk, and like will sort of put whatever on the conversation. Like if you sort of, I don't know, like probably just being married, like, learning to mirror someone. Oh, okay. So it sounds like you're interested in this. Oh, it sounds like you want to know that. And just to, make sure someone feels seen and heard is important. And I think the other thing I like to think about too is like, when I'm pitching to people is like, what is the gift to the audience? What is the gift to that person? How does that person connect to it? But as opposed to what do I want to get from this, which is, we all think of that because, right, we're trying to get something, but what can I offer this person? Sometimes for me, it just changes it. It actually takes the pressure off.
I always tell people to think that you're telling a friend about a product that you're super excited about that's not yours. Like when you try something, you're like, oh my God, it's so amazing, it's incredible. Like the true energy that you bring to that is so much more powerful than that desperate, like, please, please, please give me money, please, please, please. And you can feel that kind of energy of like, I'm about to tell you something awesome. And people always respond to the energy, and you can feel that going through the room, especially through Zoom. Through Zoom, you have to bring energy into the Zoom because people will veer. So I love that framing of the gift, and I agree. I think of it the same way. Nikki.
And Julie, just to piggyback off of what you just mentioned, like I've been in pitch meetings with investors from VC firms where there was like we kind of really needed the money at times, and I feel like that almost came across, and that's a huge turnoff for them. Like if we look desperate, they don't want to invest. But if you come in like kind of a little bit like fake it till you make it, like, you know, you have options, you're coy with like how you present things, you're confident, I think that really goes over well with investors. I mean, they care about the unit economics, they care about all the metrics, all the numbers, but they really want to see a team that has great connection, great values, confidence. It really matters. And I think also the forum in which you're, you know, speaking to an investor or telling your story, whether it's on Zoom, whether it's in person, you know, knowing kind of what the medium is and then like how to interact within that medium.
This is great. And let's take the conversation in a little bit of a different direction, still talking about developing your story, because before we get to applying it with regards to the narrative or the format, or then reapplying it once you're out there, I want to understand generating the correct story. Sometimes it comes from your personal experience, but as we've already noted, customers and users are really the heroes of our business story, right? And so if you really dig into every single pitch, there's always the story of the user and the story of the customer, which can be hypothetical or it can be with traction. So I'd love to hear examples from the panelists with regards to their own experience in business or working with other organizations. What stories do you have to tell about coming up with that customer story, and what methodology do you, as someone who's telling the story, as the storyteller, get that story out? So I'd just love to hear some stories about coming up with stories for customers.
I do a lot of this on the agency side and elsewhere, right? Whether there's somebody says, oh, send us a case study. A great case study that highlights a real challenge and really a creative approach or solution to that challenge, and then closes it with the results to say, this was the impact. That can make or break a pitch. So we do quite a bit of this. And I think the key is really around getting very crystal clear on what is the problem that the client had and came to you with, how did you solve it? And then really connecting it all the way back and taking, you know, whoever your audience is on that journey. Depends. I come from a media space, so everything's very like metrics driven. What was the KPI, you know? And then so you got to hammer, oh, we had a 10% brand lift, you know, et cetera. But try to think about your audience and what they really want to hear and care about. I think that's a key aspect. And then also don't be afraid to bring your customers into the story. There's a lot of case studies are one thing, but testimonials and video just speak volumes when you can hear it in their own voice, the way they can describe how it impacted their team and their business. So I would always encourage different mediums in that format as well.
Your customers will give you more vivid language than you will ever be able to come up with yourself. Reading verbatims and always asking for surveys, always asking for feedback. People like to have their opinions. You got to do it right away, but they will give you more rich and vivid descriptions than ever. And pulling those nuggets out really brings it to life, or bringing that situation to life. I think for us at Weil, like we're talking about perimenopause and being like a midlife woman. Like, and the whole point is like, we're invisible, we're uncool, nobody cares about us, we're flipping the script, right? So rather than sort of being like, wah, 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 and starting from that down space that nobody wants to hear, I start with something a little more interesting. Like, you know, around age 40, women start to disappear. We're literally not on marketing briefs. It's always 24 to 35 or 18 to 32, maybe 24 to 38 if they're really progressive, but there's no 40, right? And the specificity of that, like giving those little itty bitty details and then growing from that little specificity, something bigger, bigger, and bigger, draws people in as long as you keep moving on. Remember that people are people, investors are people, everybody's a human. You want to like jump them in the middle of the story, not take them through A to B to C to D. It's like screenwriting. Start at B, don't start at A. That's a piece of advice that I've always found.
I love that, like the Shakespeare quote, like, sorry the letter's so long, I didn't have time to write a short one. You know, it's practicing that pitch over and over and over again to people, and like you said, Julie, where do they tap out?
I think one of the things I liked about what you said, Julie, is get specific, make it real. One of the most difficult things for me about understanding new ideas is it's too abstract. I don't get it. And how many early founders, the first feedback they hear at the end of their pitch is they didn't get it. Nobody responded. Nobody reacted. The best antidote to that is a well-told specific story, which can be made personal. Now, if you're having trouble telling your own personal story, the customer story is a great way to make it real. I also like, Julie, that you said you can pan out to tell the macro market story. Here's the market opportunity. Here are the demos. There are different angles into your business story, the personal specific story, the macro market story, your personal story. All are different narratives and strategies, but they need to be included in your pitch. James, go for it.
Yeah, that's a perfect lead in, because I was just going to mention addressable market. Like, how big is that addressable market? What's the average income per user that we could reach? Like, how do we segment that market to understand, like, within that full market, what specific users or groups or age ranges or gender, whatever it is that the market is more so appealing to, or the product is appealing to. Like, how do we understand that better, and almost working down in like an architectural way to understand kind of the sweet spots. Like, what are the sweet spots for users that really connect with the product? So looking at the data that you have on hand from people who've already maybe used the service or that are engaging, even if you haven't launched the service or product yet, like, what kind of people are more receptive, and really leaning into that. I know something that we did as well was is create brand personas. So almost like a user persona. So it's like, oh, this is Kate, and Kate is 35 years old, and Kate likes to use SoulCycle, and she likes Jamba Juice, or whatever it is. Like, what are the habits of those specific users, and then knowing how to kind of target them. And that can even be included, like we included that in our pitch deck. We had a whole slide on like the types of clients that would probably use the service, what are some of the attributes of those clients, and kind of like a cluster analysis. So I think that went over well.
Awesome. Let's get tactical. Let's talk about hooks. So we've talked about narratives and how we identify or come up with our narrative, but whether it's an elevator pitch or a deck or whatever, hooks are what get people interested in your story. So I would love to hear the best hook advice that you have. And I have an idea because I have one that I love from the group. What are your favorite hooks to get people curious? I'll throw one out just as a thought starter. So when I was going through our accelerator program with Dream Adventures, when we were starting, a tried and true hook is imagine a world. Imagine a world where X, Y, Z. Imagine a world where all creatives could get access to media skills education without paying a dime. That's something to think about, something to imagine that tells you the problem, but also the solution, right? So imagine a world is a really easy hook that works for you to get people engaged in your story. Any other favorite hooks, personal, customer, you name it, for elevator pitch?
I like to make a really strong statement and either then defend it or tear it down. So the example I gave before, something happens around, like, women start to disappear around 40. Like, I'm putting the stake in the ground. It's a big statement, and now I'm going to like go back to it or disprove it, right? That works a lot. especially if this statement is slightly, I hate the word disruptive for obvious reasons, but if it's a little provocative or a little interesting, because people will start to wake up and listen. People want to be interested. Most pitches are boring, right? If you tell me something
Yeah.
interesting and either you defend it or you paint a beautiful picture around it or you poke holes in it, people are going to pay attention and you're going to get them kind of thinking about it, and you need to engage their minds on what you want to engage their minds in, not have them like second guessing, what's this? Why aren't they saying it? What's it about? You got to
That's
control that
great.
narrative powerfully.
I love that. I'll give another version. 50 million creators in the world, 99% aren't paid what they're worth. Why? We're here to tell you the solution, right? Investors love numbers. They love thinking about market size, percentage issue, any other fun hook strategies from the group.
For Big Lambda at the time, because it was essentially the Uber for the beauty industry, what we would do sometimes at pitch meetings was we would arrive and we'd say, oh, can you download the app if they hadn't already downloaded it, and then we'd actually ask them to book a service. So, oh, do you want to book a massage right now, or do you want to book a blowout? And we would watch them book, and then they would see the full user experience. So they would see, like, they'd get the push notification, they get the email confirmation. They would be notified when the stylist was on the way, and we'd actually sit with them like over lunch or wherever we were, and then the stylist would show up so that they could see the full experience. And I think that kind of interactiveness and like the kind of creativity that came with that definitely stuck with some investors. And I'm actually thinking of one specific investor who actually invested and she was already a user, but I think just going through the whole process with us was really big for her and was really big for her company. So maybe getting even a little stunty if you can out of it, if that kind of aligns with the value proposition of your company.
What are some emotional elements that you can put in to your stories to make people care and believe and really want to pull out their checkbooks? What are some of those heart, Nikki, you talked about at the beginning, heartstring moments?
So I love reading about stories. I love reading about storytelling and the science of storytelling. I love it. And, I'm terrible at science, but this is actually like the one thing I'm interested in scientifically. And the reason why stories are everything is because our human brain is literally hardwired to listen to a story so that we know if we were in the situation ourselves, we could survive it. Right? That's scientifically why we actually hook into stories. It's completely selfish. It's like, okay, like, why is every great movie an underdog story? Because we're all the underdogs. We all feel like the underdogs. And so it's like, oh, this person made it. How? And that's why from a very primal place, we hook in. And that's why I really believe, and maybe I'm sure people could do this other ways, but I really believe putting ourselves into the story of our business that I kind of started with is where it's at. But it's a very crafted situation, right? Like, we're crafting it. We're not oversharing. This is not like a therapy session. It's not a journal entry. It's, why does my personal experience, I'm going to connect with you on my personal experience. Why does my personal experience make me / this company uniquely suitable to this problem? That is like, to me, that's where it's at, because it's like anything, right? Like, you're investing in a business, but you also want to like the person. I think it's hard. It's, for me anyway, I can't really work with people I don't like. I find like the older I get, the more I just can't fake it anymore, I guess.
I think, though, Nikki, to your point, it's also not about just liking the person. It's making sure that that person is the right person for this business and the only person, and that's a piece of evidence of investment and success. I would love to talk about, for a moment, we've talked about some strategies with regards to hooks and emotion, but with regards to format of different pitches based on different settings. So Nikki, you and I were chatting offline a little bit about what it's like to do conversational storytelling, because we know how to pitch a script based on something we memorized, or our 30-second, or in a video, or in a deck. But when you're oftentimes in informal situations with investors or people who might be able to connect you with an investor, oftentimes it's informal. And Nikki, you and I talked about messing it up. So how do you pitch without pitching, but still tell a great story?
I will add a very quick thing. I messed up. I messed up so many times. I mess up every day about things. But one particular mess up is I was like hit up by a very well-known streaming service to produce something for them. And in the end, it wasn't the right fit for me. And so I ended up going out with this person heading the department to get oysters. And I wanted to make a good impression, and I wanted to do something with them for Don't Tell My Mother, because I was excited about what they do and the fit seemed natural. But we had the oysters and they were fine. And then I was pitching ideas because I prep everything, right? So I was prepping and pitching ideas right out of my iPhone. Look, the truth is I'd been in a pandemic too long and I forgot how to socialize. I should not have pitched a goddamn thing. I should have just had oysters, been a normal human being, but like it was my first time putting on hard clothes in like literally 24 months. And I just went. Needless to say, friends, on this phone call, it did not go well. Nothing came out of it. I felt exposed. I felt embarrassed. And, my friend Dory Clark, who, if you don't know her, she's a brilliant author. Her books are constantly like the top of the Wall Street Journal list. She talks about when you meet someone new, you don't ask them for anything for a year. Now, that's a long time. I mean, sometimes things necessitate earlier asks, but I like the spirit of it. And I think if you have the time, it's a really good thing. Like, just let a relationship grow, be of service to the other person. I'm reminding myself of that all the time, by the way. It's hard because there's always, business is transactional. But, I have to remind myself that, what do I have to offer this person? When sometimes I feel like they're the only ones to offer something and I'm just lucky if I get it. That's just my own mishigas. But the other thing is, if it's important, it's not urgent. If it's urgent, it's not important. So is it worth just, kind of creating a nice relationship with this person and then seeing what comes up? So yeah, it's funny. And the person doesn't work there anymore, which is kind of funny about it. But yeah, patience, maybe. Patience.
Julie or Se-Young, how can you make a story relevant to your audience in a conversation if maybe you're just don't know that person that well? How can you make it relatable in an informal way?
It was funny. I mean, thinking about this question, I think you're absolutely right that a lot of times you're going to find yourself having to pitch a business over in a networking situation, in a meeting. You don't have a deck, you've got to find a way to make this one appropriate, relevant, not like cringy in a very short amount of time. And I would say people all have natural styles. Some of us like a deck. Some of us actually thrive in a more conversational format. I think one is knowing where your strengths are. If it's not in a conversational style, just use it as an opportunity to learn about them, talk to them, hear what their challenges are, keep asking them questions if you're feeling a little bit nervous or you can't find that entry point. Log that information very quickly afterward, and you can always follow up with something else and say, hey, can we have a follow-up conversation? I remember you said this thing and I've been thinking about it. Or you give them some value. You raised that great challenge and I just saw this amazing article. This is a great segue to, my business and what's going on and how we're solving for that. So as somebody with social anxiety who still has to perform in this kind of world, I just wanted to put it out there that there are many tactics that you can play around with. If you don't feel like you've got the elevator pitch, like perfect in a natural socializing setting. But I do think to your question on relatability, how do you make it relevant? That's a good one. Think about what's going on in the world right now. What's happening in news, what's happening in culture. Did you guys see that, Taco Bell is bringing back the Mexican pizza with Doja Cat? That's such an awesome activation. My company had nothing to do with it, but I love it because it's a great use case of X, Y, and Z. And let me tell you about some other stuff I'm doing.
That's great. Julie, I think you were on.
Yeah, no, I was going to jump on the question thing. I think everyone, even an investor, I think everybody comes at those people in the same energy. Everybody comes to them with the same energy. And for some of us, we're women. The investors are not always, but they're frequently men, right? They're frequently men. So I have always come at those situations trying to think about how the energy I bring to the conversation might be a little bit different than the energy everybody else brings to the conversation. I like to use humor because I like to be humorous. But a lot of times people don't bother with that. They're just sort of like, hey, I'm going to give you the same pitch. You can tell I've heard it 100 times. Here it is. It's the most amazing thing. We have 10,000 users and 4,000 traction points and 25,000 pieces of data. Yeah. They've checked out. They've seen and heard it 100 times. They don't care, right? So can you bring real energy to the conversation? If you're funny, use humor. If you're not, honestly, if you're in a casual situation, ask for advice or help. That is a backdoor strategy that works a lot. Like, I know you're a very busy, very investor-y guy, but could I just ask you this one thing? Because I have this meeting. It works a lot. People will end up offering you something because you didn't ask. So it depends on the vibe and it depends on the room. But I think, and I did this on a Q&A, go into whatever you are naturally. And you said this a little bit, Sam, too. Like, go into what your natural energy and own that energy and just dial it up by about 5%. If you're a nerd, be the super nerd. If you're funny, be funny. If you're like the guy who knows the facts, like blind him with the fact, but like just be you dialed up one notch. Don't be the guy that pulls the string and just gives the same pitch that they've heard in the same energy they've heard a million times. Does that answer the question, Michael? I don't know if it does.
It's great. No, I love that angle of making it very authentic to who you are and your style. And I think that is memorable. Humor is definitely memorable. I want to go one layer deeper. We're just peeling back the layers of this storytelling onion, thinking about the investor as an audience member and thinking about what their expectations are. I know that when we meet somebody for the very first time and it's a business relationship, it would be considered rude not to know anything about them, not to go and look at their LinkedIn or maybe look at what they posted on Twitter. It is just as rude to an investor if you do not know their stage of investment, what type of companies they invest in, how much they usually give in terms of money. And I think having all of that data gives you an angle into telling your story in a way that is relevant to that audience. So now what I want to talk about is just telling your story in different ways. We've talked about the narratives, but telling your story with numbers can also be really effective. What examples do you have to share around number storytelling? It could be unit economics. It could be all the funny acronyms, TAM, CAC, LTV. How do you tell your story to an investor with numbers that makes them sit up?
James, you want to take it?
Oh,
Go.
sorry, go on. Feel free to go. Oh, okay. I know for at least our company, because it was like a mobile app, the investors really wanted to know like what some of our core metrics were. So they were looking at ROAS, like our return on ad spend. They wanted to know our LTV, our lifetime value of each client. They wanted to know our growth rate, month over month, year over year. They really wanted to see not only like those metrics, but how it forecasts into the addressable market size, so that they could see like, okay, here's our revenue run rate right now, but what could it be in the future? Even looking at like our burn rate, how much money are we losing every month? And sometimes it's almost exciting for them to see how much money you're losing, because with additional investment, it might actually help to optimize that or improve things. And along those lines, it was interesting because I met with an investor once who could, and I was honest about like things in the business, and I was with the founder, things in the business that maybe weren't, going perfectly. And I think they almost like to see that sometimes, because they realize like, oh, there's ways that you can improve what you're doing now. So with additional investment, like we could even be stronger as a team or more optimized. So I think like really knowing your numbers and having some sort of like forecast, like a timeline, here's where we're at now. Here's how we got here, but like, here's what we can be in the future. Because ultimately they're investing in you to propel your growth. and so that they can maybe have a successful exit at the end of their investment.
James, thank you so much. We're going to transition to Q&A. Just to recap the content, we talked about different narrative foundations: personal, customer, and market. This is the teacher in me. Tell them what you told them, tell them what you're going to tell them, summarize. We talked about different styles of storytelling, different formats and scenarios for storytelling. And now let's get into some more specific questions. When you're in a situation and you're trying to read the room on this person, should I ask for advice? Should I bring up funding? How do you listen to that person's situation or whatever information you're able to gather to position what you're going to say with your story and how you tell your story? So this is more about a read the room question. And I think, Julie, you suggested ask them a question. Any other advice around your story angle or your story approach? I might make a recommendation. I'll just put this as a prompt, which is to flip the script. Flip the script and turn the table. Can you tell me a little bit more about your portfolio companies? Oh, why did you invest in those portfolio companies? The more information that you can gather about your audience, the more that you can engage with your audience, the more they're going to listen to what you have to say, because they will believe it to be relevant or more relevant. And so even just repeating what you heard them say makes them feel as if you're there to talk to them and not just some random person. Anyone else have some thoughts to share about on the fly approaches?
I was going to say that obviously body language is a no-brainer and a piece to look at. But what I would say is, if you feel like your audience, whoever it is glazing over, don't be afraid to stop, take a second and be like, can we pivot? Is this, what are you interested in? What are your challenges? And use those opportunities to ask questions, or even just say, like, just acknowledge it, not in a passive aggressive way, but it will definitely get their attention, and they'll realize, like, oh my God, you are looking at me and paying attention to the fact that I've shifted away, stared off, looking at my phone, whatever. And so, you can always say, like, hey, is that an urgent call that you need to get? Totally understand. Whatever it is, it kind of shows that reciprocity.
So Young, you also mentioned common ground as a nice strategy. And what's in the news, what's trending? How can you identify common ground to be able to gain some listening real estate with your audience? What have you done in the past to kind of find common ground with your audience?
I have always said that I need to develop more hobbies other than working, because it does make finding common ground very challenging. And especially, as a queer person, everyone I'm working with, they've got kids, and it's like, I don't. And that's an easy one that everybody connects on. And if you don't connect on that, you don't connect on that. It can be extra challenging as a queer person in these environments. But some easy ones, I think about is commonality is dogs. Everybody loves pets. Everybody loves pets. Food, restaurants, those are the things that I'm passionate about. So try to think of what are your hobbies and passion points and test them out. See if they respond. See if you can find actually personal common ground and use that as a springboard to then kind of tailor what news, what information you're bringing that's going to be right in their wheelhouse and something that they might even care about.
I also totally what Se-Young just said, and I just do mega deep dives on people before I meet them. Like, I go down a Google K-hole, in all seriousness, their Instagram, their Facebook, who do we have in common? Where did they go to school? We all have big lives, and there's a chance that you might know someone, or they grew up in the same, you grew up in New York, they grew up in New York, or they went to school in New York. And to be completely honest, I very often I'm like, oh yeah, so when I grew up in New York, and oh, I grew up in New York. Oh my God, you grew up in New York. And I very well know they grew up in New York, but let the other person make the connection, but do your homework. Do your homework, because I think it's going to be so much easier to find those connections when you personally know what the connections are.
Nikki, I think that's great advice. And you might even find that that person's story is already really out there. If they are an investor, maybe they've written a book. Have you read the
Exactly.
book? Or they've written a blog post. Have you read the blog post? So finding a way in the door with a hook or a point of common ground can be as easy as getting to know that person just a little bit better. And also thinking about receptivity, their heart and their minds will open when they believe you have understood them as your audience. So storytelling, again, kind of back to the first thing, is not all about you. It's also about who are you talking to? Why are you talking to them? So
Yeah.
only have go ahead.
Oh,
Go ahead.
sorry. I just want to add one thing, which is like, it's really nice to be, and it goes a long way to be genuinely interested. Like, are you someone where curiosity is a value? Like for me, curiosity is like, I did one of these value things with my, business life coach. And, curiosity is my number one value, that and like community and connection. So like for me, I really do want to know things. And I'd say like, be interested, because someone may have so much more to say than you even expect. They may want to share something,
And if you can't find common ground, or all else fails, sometimes try vulnerability, try volunteering up information and kind of going there. You will find that people respond really well to that, and oftentimes can open up their clamshell a bit if you go first.
I think that's great. Can you give an example of being vulnerable, Se-Young? I think you were vulnerable 2 minutes ago when you were like, it's kind of hard to find common ground sometimes.
Yeah, that's a big one. I think, I think there are challenges that you can share being, without like playing the world's tiniest violin, to challenges that you might face as a woman, a person of color, a queer person. That story in and of itself, I feel like even though they can't relate to it, might be interested, might be drawn in by that, and want to hear a little bit more about how you got to where you are despite some of the difficulties and challenges. Those are some of the vulnerabilities I feel like I will be willing to volunteer up sometimes.
Yeah, I love that. I also think investors are always learning and always open to learning. And if you can ask them things like, did you know? And share with them information about a market or a product, or sometimes that can be a nice way in. Oftentimes they're looking for that diamond in the rough. They're looking for that underserved community or audience that may or may not have a solution that wouldn't come across their radar. So sometimes just educating can be a nice approach to telling a story.
I worked on a bail insurance product. So the idea was bail insurance as a business model, completely geared toward mostly the Black community, but communities of color. And everyone we were pitching to were privileged white people that couldn't relate. So one thing I realized was I had to do something like jarring immediately to like blow their minds a little bit. And by the end of the pitch, make them feel like, damn, I want to be a hero. I want to make a difference. And we had something that was very tightly scripted, that was spoken by a Black man. And it started with a very startling visual of a police situation. And we just said, bail insurance. People are like, who needs bail insurance? And then we had Brad say, I do. And a lot of my friends do too. And then we had a few things that would open it up, that would like kind of blow their minds about inequity. And we took something like, instead of saying like, we talked about being over-policed and underbanked. We took a little bit of the emotion out of it, and we were like, these are communities that are over-policed and underbanked. Over-policed and underbanked. And we kept using those words over and over to try to put this other idea in it. And honestly, some of the investors that we presented it to became outspoken evangelical advocates that took action in the community, because nobody had ever been like, I am going to blow your mind here and open this up to you in a way that is not defensive, that is not angry, that is not lecturing, that is not missiony, but is like, damn, you're saying in this city for this much weed, this guy goes to prison for 10 years and this guy walks, and I made sure the guy looked like it could be their son. And I just played the heartstrings. I played it up and I played it down. I humanized and I shocked and I humanized and I shocked, and I played it like a violin. And it was actually kind of fun to watch it, to watch people like have their minds changed and really become advocates of the idea. Anyway, sorry, I just had to share that because it was,
That is the power of
it was
storytelling.
memorable.
What a wonderful example to wrap it up. Thank you so much, Julie, James, Sayong, Nikki, Matt, and Katie. I'm gonna turn it over to Katie to wrap it up.
Awesome. Thank you everyone for attending. Thank you panelists for being here and providing such wonderful insight on storytelling and pitching, which is a great segue actually into our next event, which is next Thursday, May 26th. It's power pitching every time, every situation. The theme is you can pitch anywhere to anyone. So if you want to craft that story even more and get into the more nitty gritty of that, that is the event that you're going to want to attend. So again, thank you to everyone that attended. If anyone has any questions about Start Out or for any of the panelists, please reach out. We would love to answer those questions for you. Awesome. Thanks everyone. Have a great evening.